The movie begins with Augustine Lofthouse, a scientist sitting alone in an Arctic observatory, eating. A flashback reveals that 3 weeks earlier, the facility was evacuated due to a global disaster. Most of humanity has perished, and radiation is spreading across Earth. Augustine, terminally ill, decides to stay behind, knowing he has little time left. Without his regular treatments, he is expected to survive only about a week. During the evacuation, a frantic woman searches for her daughter but is told the child boarded an earlier helicopter. The rest of the group leaves, and Augustine is left alone. He spends his days giving himself transfusions, taking medicine, sleeping, and watching the stars as the radiation creeps closer. A flashback reveals a younger Augustine presenting his discovery of K23, a moon of Jupiter with conditions that could support life. After his talk, he meets Jean, a young woman who challenges him about how realistic his research really is. They begin a relationship. In the present, Augustine checks for active space missions. All have stopped except for Ether, a spaceship returning from K23. He feels a connection to one of its crew members, Sullivan, and plans to contact them when they are within range in 11 hours. Aboard the Ether, Sullivan, Sully, wakes and greets her fellow crew members, Aide, Mitchell, and Sanchez. The Ether has been unable to communicate with Earth for 3 weeks. Despite thorough troubleshooting, the crew cannot determine the cause. Sully mentions that a colony ship bound for K23 was supposed to launch a week ago but has not responded to their attempts at contact. On Earth, Augustine prepares dinner for himself. Turning around, he notices a half-eaten bowl of food on the table and momentarily becomes suspicious. He dismisses it as something he must have forgotten. Later, while working, a fire alarm goes off. Augustine discovers a fire in the kitchen and extinguishes it. Exhausted, he sinks to the floor and is shocked to find a little girl hiding there. Augustine quickly tries to contact the authorities to rescue her but cannot reach anyone. He tells the girl that he is the wrong person to help her, but feeling guilty, he makes her dinner and asks about her family. She does not respond, and he assumes she cannot speak. She draws an iris, revealing her name is Iris. When the Ether comes into range, Augustine tries to establish contact but fails. He explains to Iris that K23 was meant to be humanity's next home, but the colonization mission was disrupted by the disaster. He must warn the Ether crew about Earth's dire condition before they return. That night, Iris insists on sleeping in Augustine's room despite his protests. Augustine realizes the observatory's antenna is not strong enough to reach the Ether. Determined, he decides to journey to a weather station further north that has a more powerful antenna. Packing his transfusion machine and other essentials, Augustine and Iris set out on the perilous trip. Aboard the Ether, crew member Maya relives a memory using holographic technology while Sanchez watches curiously. Meanwhile, Mitchell reminisces about his wife as he watches a romantic movie, and Sully and Aide play cards. Suddenly, an alarm indicates a navigation issue. The ship has veered off course, and the new route will take them through uncharted space. With no way to contact Earth, the crew has no choice but to proceed. On Earth, Augustine and Iris encounter the wreckage of a crashed plane. Inside, Augustine finds a survivor who begs for help, realizing the man's suffering is beyond aid. Augustine makes the devastating decision to end his misery. Shaken, he continues the journey with Iris, setting up camp for a transfusion. A flashback shows Augustine running into Jean, who now has a daughter. Augustine asks if she has told the girl that he is her father. Jean tells Augustine that if he wants the girl to know about him, he can come and introduce himself at any time. Augustine says nothing, and Jean leaves. On the Ether, it is revealed that Sully is pregnant with a baby girl, and Aide is the father. The two are in a happy relationship. Back on Earth, Augustine and Iris are driving through a storm when Iris points out silhouettes in the distance. They turn out to be abandoned camps, and Augustine decides to spend the night there. During the night, Augustine tells Iris that he wishes she would share something about herself. She is busy drawing the face of a woman, and Augustine remarks that he once knew a woman with a face like that. She was loud, unlike Iris, and had the most beautiful laugh. Suddenly, Iris looks up and asks if he loved her.
Did you love her?
This turns out to be a dream. When Augustine wakes up, he realizes the entire camp is sinking into water beneath the ice. He rushes to get Iris out but returns to retrieve his transfusion machine. While he manages to get it, the ice starts cracking rapidly. As Augustine tries to start the snowmobile, the ice beneath it gives way and he falls into the freezing water along with it. Underwater, he loses the transfusion machine as it sinks beyond his reach. Miraculously, Augustine resurfaces without freezing to death, but he knows his days are now numbered. Augustine and Iris continue their journey on foot, exposed to harsh weather and wildlife. They encounter a pack of wolves during a storm, and Augustine fires his gun to scare them away. In the commotion, he loses sight of Iris. Unable to see her tracks in the storm, he collapses. When the storm clears, Iris finds him, and he hugs her tightly. They press on and finally reach the weather station. Using its antenna, Augustine establishes contact with the ether. Sully is delighted to hear his voice and asks why no one on Earth is reaching out to them. Augustine begins explaining the global catastrophe, but the ether, traveling through uncharted territory, encounters an asteroid field. The ship's radar and communication systems are damaged. After clearing the field, Mitchell determines that repairs must be made outside the ship. Sully and Maya volunteer for the task, but since Maya lacks experience in spacewalking and Sully is pregnant, Aide decides to join them for supervision. 3 astronauts leave their ship to fix it while Sanchez plays music to keep things cheerful. As they finish and try to return, another asteroid field hits. They barely survive, clinging to the ship. Maya notices blood in her suit. She's been injured and is losing oxygen. Aide rushes her inside, but the airlock takes too long to pressurize. When they remove her helmet, it's too late. Maya has lost too much blood and dies despite Sanchez's help. Later, the ship gets an old message from Earth. Mitchell's wife says their sons are sick and people are evacuating. Upset, Mitchell decides to return to Earth to find his family. He tells Aide and Sully to take the ship to K-23 to start over. Sanchez overhears and says he'll join Mitchell to bring Maya's body home. He shares that Maya reminded him of his daughter, who died young. As Sanchez and Mitchell prepare to leave, Sully contacts Augustine to thank him for finding K-23. She reveals he inspired her to become a scientist because he once worked with her mother and gave her a moon rock. Augustine realizes Sully is his daughter, Iris. The little girl he thought was traveling with him was just a vision of her younger self. Augustine asks Iris to describe K-23, and as she does, he imagines standing there with her as a child. Their radio cuts off, leaving Sully and Aide alone. They set course for K-23 to restart humanity, though it's unclear how they'll manage. The end. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and see you next time.